Imagine for a second, blood, sweat and tears for years, bombs exploding right next to you, comrades dying in your arms, and after all this, after surviving when thousands perished, you finally return home, to the arms of the only person who never stopped believing you were alive, your mother. But what happens when the door opens and silence is the only thing that greets you? Jack Wilson lived that nightmare. What he finds in his mother's room forever changes the meaning of wait and will shatter his heart. World War II didn't just kill people in the trenches. As bombs fell and bullets flew, there was another kind of pain happening in the houses, in the rooms, on the empty tables with untouched dishes. The pain of waiting, the pain of uncertainty, the pain of those left behind. And no one has felt this pain more deeply than mothers. Look at your cell phone now. See how long it has been since you last spoke to your mother. One day, a week, a month. Now imagine 5 years without news. 5 years of waking up every day, looking out the window, waiting for a familiar face to appear at the gate. 5 years of waiting that seemed like an eternity. That's exactly what happened to Martha Wilson, Jack's mother. While he was fighting in the worst possible conditions, facing the biting cold of European winters, the devastating hunger, the paralyzing fear, she was home, waiting, praying, believing when everyone had already lost hope. Your son isn't coming back, they said. He's been missing for so long. You need to accept it. But there is something stronger than the steel of weapons, more resistant than armored tanks, more powerful than all war artillery. A mother's love. And then, finally, it happened. The war is over. Jack survived the unthinkable, wounded, traumatized, but alive. Imagine the feeling, the relief of knowing that in a few weeks you would be home, eating food that only your mother knows how to make, sleeping in the bed she kept made every day, as if you could return at any moment. Jack traveled thousands of miles, by train, by ship, on foot. Nothing mattered beyond that moment. The family street, childhood home, the gate that creaked in that way he knew so well. But something was different. The curtains were closed, the garden abandoned, the silence too heavy. Every step toward the door was like walking through the minefield all over again. His heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to explode. And when he finally came in, when Jack called, "Mom?" and no one responded, he felt a cold that not even the worst winters of the war had been able to cause. It was then that he went up the stairs, slowly, one step after another, as if each step took him closer to a truth he didn't want to face. The door to her mother's room was ajar. Jack pushed, and what you saw there, what Jack Wilson found in his mother's room, is so deeply moving, so absolutely devastating, that I need you to keep watching. Because it's not just a war story. It's a story about time, about repentance, about that hug you stopped giving, that call you didn't make, that visit you postponed. With every minute that passes, someone somewhere is waiting for a call, a visit, a hug that may never come. Don't let this story repeat itself in your life. If you've ever felt the weight of regret or want to avoid feeling it, leave a like right now and subscribe to the channel for more stories that can completely change your perspective on what really matters. Before it's too late, look at the most important person in your life right now. Look into her eyes. Imagine that tomorrow you need to leave. Imagine that there is a real chance that you will never see that face again. What would you say? What would you do differently? How many I love yous would you let escape your lips as if they were the last words you could utter? In 1939, thousands of young people left their homes without knowing that they were giving their last hug to the people they loved most. World War II didn't just steal lives on the battlefields. He stole goodbyes, he stole last chances. He stole that "see you later" that could never turn into a "I'm back." This is not just another story about war. It's a story about time, about how much we pay for every minute wasted away from the ones we love. Have you ever felt that pang in your chest? That gut-wrenching feeling that you should have called, you should have visited, you should have said how much you love while there was still time. Jack Wilson felt it. In the worst possible way. Jack survived hell. He survived when thousands around him fell like autumn leaves. He survived the hunger that gnawed at his stomach day after day. He survived the cold that froze not only his fingers, but his soul. And all this for one reason, the promise of returning home, to go back to your mother, to hug her again and say everything I didn't say when she left. War teaches you about the value of small things, the value of a crumpled letter in your uniform pocket, the value of a photograph kept as the most precious treasure, the value of a memory that keeps you sane when everything around you falls apart. And for Jack, value was in his mother's eyes. In the eyes he imagined night after night, as bombs exploded in the distance, lighting up a sky that seemed to never know peace again. When this is all over, he promised himself, when I can finally come back, I will make up for every minute of absence. I will make every second count. But life has a cruel way of mocking our plans, doesn't it? Life has a cruel way of showing us that time doesn't wait for our decisions, doesn't respect our promises, doesn't care about our regrets. And when the war finally ended, when Jack was finally able to board the train that would take him back home, his heart was beating so hard that it seemed to want to escape his chest. It was a mix of anxiety, joy, and fear. Fear of what could have changed. Afraid that maybe, just maybe, he had waited too long. What would you do if you knew you only had one chance? A single chance to say everything that is saved, to hug like there's no tomorrow, to look into the eyes and let your heart speak without fear, without trepidation, without reservations. Jack Wilson discovered that some opportunities never come back, that some waits have no end, that some regrets are too heavy to carry. This is a story that will touch the deepest part of your soul. That will make you question your priorities. That will make you pick up the phone right now and call your mother, your father, your brother, your son. Because the most painful truth Jack has learned is that time is the most valuable resource we have. And once it is exhausted, no amount of wealth in the world can buy it back. 1,825 days. It just seems like a number, doesn't it? But try to imagine 5 full years in which every dawn brings the same cruel question. Will I survive until dusk? 5 years where every meager meal is a miracle. 5 years where the sound of a plane in the sky makes your heart freeze in terror. This is exactly what Jack Wilson experienced. The Second World War was not just a chapter in the history books. It was torn flesh. It was blood spilled. It was the smell of gunpowder filling your nostrils until you could no longer remember what it was like to breathe fresh air. It was the weight of carrying dead comrades on your shoulders, knowing that tomorrow it could be you being carried. The raw and unforgiving reality of war shattered the innocence of an entire generation. There are reports of soldiers going completely crazy, who lost the ability to speak, to feel, to connect with anything that resembled humanity. The human mind has limits, and when these limits are exceeded, something inside us breaks irreparably. But Jack had something that many others didn't. He had an anchor, a reason to keep going when everything around you was screaming to give. "Pass, my son, come back to me." These words, written in a crumpled letter that he read and reread until the paper's folds threatened to tear, were his mantra. It was the voice of his mother, Martha Wilson, echoing through the paper, across oceans, battlefields, all destruction, to reach his heart. "I'm waiting for you, every day, in the same chair, looking out the same window, praying to the same God." Can you imagine the strength of that promise? The strength of knowing that no matter what, there is someone in the world who will never ever give up on you. Someone who keeps your seat at the table, even when everyone else has accepted that you're never coming back. It's the kind of love that defies logic, that defies time, that defies even death. And it was this love that kept Jack alive, when he was so hungry that his legs could barely support him, when the cold was so intense that your fingers lost sensitivity, when the fear was so overwhelming that breathing became an act of courage. It was the image of Martha waiting at the door that kept him from surrendering. "One more day," he said to himself every morning when he woke up. "Just one more day and I'll be closer to home." That was his personal mantra, your daily prayer, his way of breaking the endless hell of war into bearable pieces. Because the truth is that no one survives thinking about 5 years of horror. You survive by thinking about the next minute, the next hour, the next day. Meanwhile, across the ocean, in a small house in Ohio with lace curtains in the window, Martha was experiencing her own war, the war of waiting, the war of uncertainty, the silent war of mothers who don't know if their children are alive or dead, if they have food or are hungry, if they are hot or freezing in some distant trench. A war without bombs, without shots, but equally devastating. She maintained her routine as a form of sanity. I made his bed every morning as if he could come back that day. I made his favorite apple cake on Sundays, even if no one else ate it. I spoke to his photo on the bedside table, telling him the news about the neighborhood, the small joys, hiding the sadness so as not to worry him, even if it was just an image frozen in time. It is this kind of love that transcends human understanding, It's that kind of faith that moves mountains. It's this kind of hope that lights up even the darkest night. And it was with this love, this faith, and this hope that Jack finally survived the 1,125 days of war hell. Do you have someone who would wait for you like this? Someone who would never give up hope, even when everyone else has given up? In the comments, tell us what was the greatest act of love you have ever witnessed. There is a strange feeling when you return to a place you know intimately after a long absence. It's as if the place has changed, but you can't quite put your finger on what, as if every detail is slightly out of place, creating an image that is both familiar and strange at the same time. That's exactly what Jack Wilson felt when he finally arrived on his street after 5 years away. Maple Street seemed narrower than in his memories. The trees, taller. The houses are older. It was as if everything had breathed and lived without him, following a natural course that he could not witness. And with each step towards house number 27, an uneasy feeling grew in his chest. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Have you ever had that intuition? That uncomfortable feeling that seems to warn of an invisible danger? It's your brain picking up subtle signals that your conscious mind hasn't yet processed. And all these signs were screaming at Jack. The garden, once impeccably tended by her mother, was now wild, with weeds growing among the rose bushes. The paint on the fence was peeling, and even more disturbing, the curtains that his mother, Martha, would never close were completely drawn. Martha Wilson was known throughout the neighborhood for her unwavering routine. The curtains were always open at dawn, to let God's light in, as she said. The porch swept precisely at 9 in the morning, the radio playing softly through the open window on Sunday afternoons. These small certainties were as much a part of that house's identity as the red bricks on its facade. And now everything was different, silent, closed, as if the house was holding its breath, waiting. Jack felt his heart quicken as he approached the gate. The familiar creaking of rusty hinges seemed strangely loud in the afternoon silence. Every step on the stone path sounded like a gunshot to his war-trained ears. And then, just as he was almost reaching the porch steps, he heard a voice that made him freeze. "Jack? Jack Wilson? My God, is that really you?" He turned slowly, immediately recognizing the voice of Mr. Peterson, the elderly neighbor who had lived next door since Jack was a child. But the man he saw looked like he had aged 20 years, not just 5. His hair, once gray, was now completely white. His body, once erect and strong despite his age, was now hunched over, as if carrying an invisible weight. "Mr. Peterson, yes, it's me. I just got back." The old man stood still, looking at Jack as if he were seeing a ghost. There was something in his eyes, something that made Jack's stomach tighten into a painful knot. Was it pity? Was it shock? Was it guilt? You're alive. They said you were missing, that you had probably been killed in action." Jack gave a small smile, trying to ease the palpable tension in the air. "As you can see, the reports of my death were a bit exaggerated. I was a prisoner for a while, but I managed to survive. And now I'm back, home, to my mother." It was at that moment that it happened. The moment when the pieces started to fall into place. The moment Mr. Peterson's expression changed from shock to something much more devastating. His eyes filled with tears, and he took a step towards Jack, as if to protect him from an imminent fall. "Jack, my boy, your mother." And suddenly Jack didn't want to listen. I didn't want to know. He wanted to get back on the train, back on the ship, back to anywhere that wasn't there, facing the truth that was beginning to form like a dark cloud on his horizon. "She's fine, isn't she? She always said she'd be waiting for me. She promised, Mr. Peterson. She promised." His voice broke on the last word, betraying the despair that now rose within him like a suffocating wave. And it was then that Mr. Peterson spoke the words that would change everything. "Jack, your mother never believed you were dead. When she got the notification, she said it was a mistake, that she could feel you were still alive, that you would come back to her." Jack felt a moment of relief. She knew. Somehow, through that connection only mothers and children share, she knew he was alive. Every day, Jack. Every day she put your plate on the table, kept your bed made, talked about you like you could walk through the door at any moment. Relief began to turn into a new form of terror. There was something about the way Mr. Peterson spoke, the tense he used, and before he could finish, Jack was already running towards the front door, as if he could overcome the truth if he were fast enough. Mr. Peterson froze in place, unable to stop Jack from entering the house. His lips moved in silent prayer, as he watched the young soldier storm through the front door. Some blows of fate are so cruel that nothing can soften them, not even time, not even the preparation. "Mom? Mom?" Jack's voice echoed through the silent house, a silence that responded more eloquently than any words could, a silence that carried 5 years of absence, of waiting, of unanswered prayers. The house seemed frozen in time. Everything was exactly as Jack remembered, but with a thin layer of dust covering the furniture, as if the house itself was waiting, suspended between past and present. On the living room table, photos of him in his uniform. On the wall was a map where Martha had marked every battle mentioned on the radio, trying to guess where her son might be. Mr. Peterson finally found the courage to follow him. He found Jack standing in the kitchen, staring at the table. A table set for 2 people, a half-full cup of coffee, an open newspaper, as if someone had been interrupted in the middle of breakfast. "She did it every day," Mr. Peterson said softly, as if he feared his voice might break something fragile in the air. "He prepared the coffee the way you liked it. He sat at the table and read the newspaper out loud, as if you could hear. He said he was keeping you updated on the city's news for when you got back." Jack touched the cold cup of coffee. He tried to imagine his mother sitting there day after day, year after year, carrying on a conversation with an absent son, preserving a routine that gave meaning to his days, a routine that kept hope alive when everything else said it was time to let go. "At first, people tried to convince her," Mr. Peterson continued. "They tried to make her accept that you probably wouldn't come back, that she was just torturing herself with that weight. But Martha, your mother, was made of something different. She said she could feel that you were alive, that her mother's heart would know if you were gone, and that as long as she felt you alive, she would keep waiting." Jack's legs gave out, and he collapsed into the chair that should have been his, the chair that waited for him for 1,125 days. The weight of that hope, of that unshakable faith, was almost physical on his shoulders. "What happened to her?" Jack finally managed to ask, even though every cell in his body already knew the answer. He already felt the truth like a black hole forming in his chest, sucking out all the light, all the hope. Mr. Peterson took a deep breath, as if gathering strength. "She got sick last winter. It was quick, pneumonia that the doctors couldn't control. But until the last day, Jack, until her last breath, she kept her routine. She dragged herself out of bed, even though she was weak, to prepare her place at the table. She said everything had to be ready for when you came back." Jack felt something break inside him, something fundamental and irreparable, as if all the horror of war, all the inhumanity he witnessed, was just a prelude to this pain of knowing that while he was fighting to survive on distant battlefields, his mother was fighting her own silent battle at home, a battle against time, a battle she lost just a few months before he finally returned. "Who?" Jack couldn't finish the question. His throat was so tight he could barely breathe. "My wife and I took care of her in the end. She didn't want to go to the hospital. She said she had to be home when you got home." And Jack, even in the last few days, when she could barely speak, she smiled whenever we mentioned your name, as if she knew a secret that no one else knew, as if she was absolutely sure you would come back. Jack hung his head, unable to contain the tears that were now flowing freely. 5 years surviving hell, 5 years of dreaming of the moment he would see his mother's face again, 5 years holding on to the promise of a reunion that would now never happen. "There was something she wanted you to have," Mr. Peterson said, his voice also breaking. "It's in her room. A letter, I think. She wrote it the last few days. She made my wife promise to keep it for you in case you came back after she—" Jack didn't even hear the rest. He was already on his feet, staggering toward the stairs, climbing the steps he knew so well. The hallway seemed longer than I remembered. The door to his mother's room, slightly ajar, seemed to be waiting for him, as if the entire house was holding its breath for this moment. He pushed the door open slowly. The room was exactly as I remembered. The double bed your mother continued to use even after your father died. The nightstand with the antique clock that marked the time with a comforting tick. The lace curtains filtered the sunlight, creating delicate patterns on the wooden floor. And on the bed, an envelope. A simple white envelope with your name written in your mother's elegant, familiar handwriting. Handwriting that seemed shakier than he remembered, as if the hand holding the pen was too weak to control the movements. With trembling fingers, Jack took the envelope. He sat on the edge of the bed where his mother probably spent her last moments, the bed where she took her last breath, perhaps with his name on her lips. And slowly, As if he feared the paper might disintegrate in his hands, he opened the envelope. How much time would you spend just looking at the last letter from someone you loved deeply? How long would it take to work up the courage and read the last words that person left for you? Share a heart in the comments if you've ever received a message that changed your life forever. The letter shook in Jack's hands, a piece of paper so light, but it carried the weight of the world. Taking a deep breath, he finally began to read, "My dear Jack, if you are reading these words, then my wait is over, but yours continues. It continues in a way I would never wish for you, waiting for repentance, waiting for unspoken words, the wait that comes with the certainty that some opportunities are lost forever. I'm not writing to cause more pain to your heart, already so tried by war. I'm writing because I need you to know with absolute certainty that I never, not for a moment, stopped believing that you would come home. When the telegram arrived that you were missing in action, probably dead, something inside me refused to accept it. It wasn't stubbornness, my son. It was knowledge, the kind of knowledge only a mother possesses. I would know if you had left this world. I would feel in my own heart. The moment yours stopped beating. So I waited. I prepared your breakfast every morning. I kept your bed made. I talked to your photograph as if you could hear me from across the ocean. The neighbors thought I was losing my mind. Maybe he was. But it's a beautiful madness to believe so completely in someone that the rest of the world has already given up on. Now the doctor says my time is running out, that the fever won't go down this time. And for the first time since you left, I feel scared. Not from death. I made peace with her a long time ago. I'm afraid I won't be here when you get back. Because you will come back, Jack. Of that I'm sure. But how cruel of fate would it be to separate us for just a few months, a few weeks, maybe even days? In the bedside table drawer you will find a calendar. Each day since your departure is marked in red. 1,125 brands to date. Each one represents a prayer, a hope, a day when I refuse to give up on you. Keep scoring for me, okay? Keep counting the days now in a different way. No longer the days since you left, but the days until we meet again. I want you to know that there was not a single moment of regret in my waiting. Waiting for the one we love is never wasted time. It's an act of faith. It is an act of love in its purest form. And love, my son, true love, does not know the meaning of the word impossible. There's one last thing I need you to know. The day you left for war, you were in such a hurry, so worried about missing your train, that you ran out the door. You shouted, "See you later, Mom," over your shoulder without looking back. There was no last hug. There was no lingering farewell look. At the time, I thought there would be time for thousands of hugs when you got back. Don't count it as a burden, Jack. Count it as a lesson. Never walk out the door without a proper hug. Never assume there will be another opportunity to say what needs to be said. Time is treacherous and rarely gives us advance notice when it is about to run out. By the time you read this letter, I will be gone. But I want you to know that I die with peace in my heart, because I know that you are alive. I know you're coming home. And I know, with the certainty that only a mother's love can have, that you will have a long and full life ahead of you. Live it well, my son. Live each day as if it were your last, because one day it will be. Love deeply, forgive easily, and never ever postpone happiness thinking there will be time tomorrow. With all the love that a human heart can contain, your mother, Martha. The paper of the letter was now stained not only by Martha's tears as she wrote it, but also by Jack's as he read it. He held her against his chest, as if he could somehow absorb the love contained in those words directly into his heart. Slowly, with legs that were barely supporting him, Jack stood up and walked to the bedside table. He opened the drawer and found exactly what the letter mentioned, a calendar. Not an ordinary calendar, but a handmade one, meticulously created with pages sewn together. 5 years of days, each marked with a little red cross. Some marks were firm and precise. Others, especially the more recent ones, were shaky and sloppy, evidence of Martha's growing weakness. Jack turned the pages slowly, as if he were leafing through his mother's own life during those years. On some dates, there were small notes. Today, the radio. Mentioned battles in France. I wonder if Jack is there. The postman brought news of the war today. Nothing about Jack. I dreamed about Jack last night. He was smiling. He's alive. I know he is. They were the daily thoughts of a mother fighting against the tide of probability, against official reports, against the well-meaning advice of friends and neighbors to move on. Martha Wilson hadn't just waited for her son. She had lived each day in the unshakable certainty of his return, and she was right. Jack was alive. Jack had returned, but the cruel clock of fate had robbed them of their reunion by a margin so narrow it seemed like a cosmic mockery. On the last page of the calendar, dated just 2 months ago, Martha's handwriting was almost illegible. It was little more than a scribble, and next to the date, a final note. I feel like I'm getting weaker, but Jack will come back, I'm sure. He needs to come back. It was then that Jack noticed something else in the drawer, something that made his heart stop for a moment, a small tape recorder, the kind that had become popular just before the war, and next to him, a ribbon, a single ribbon with a simple label, "To Jack, when he gets back." With hands that were now shaking uncontrollably, Jack picked up the recorder and tape. He put the tape in place and after a moment's hesitation, pressed the play button. The hissing sound of the tape filled the silent room. And then, like a cruel and wonderful miracle at the same time, Martha Wilson's voice filled the space between them. A weak, hoarse voice, but unmistakably hers. "Jack, my dear boy, if you're hearing this, then my prayers have been answered. You're alive. You've come home. I'm so sorry I wasn't there to welcome you, to hold you, to see the man you've become. The doctor says I'm getting worse, that I need to spare myself. But how could I waste these last moments when there's so much I want to say to you? I remember the day you were born, you know. So little, so perfect. Your blue eyes just like your father's. And when you held my finger in your little hand, I knew I would do anything for you, that I would wait for you forever if I needed you. The neighbors think I've lost my mind. I hear their whispers when they think I'm not listening. Poor Martha, still waiting for that boy. Don't you realize he's not coming back? But they don't understand, Jack. They don't understand what it's like to be a mother. They don't understand how I would feel if you were gone from this world. So I know you're alive. I know you're fighting to get home, and I'll be waiting for you, even if it's on the other side." Here her voice broke, and the sound of a faint cough could be heard, followed by a moment of silence. Then, with an audible effort to control her voice, she continued, "Jack, I have one last request. Don't cry for me. Don't carry the weight of regret. Don't torture yourself thinking, if only I had come back a few weeks earlier. Time is something we don't control, my son. What matters is not how much time we have, but what we do with it. When your father died, I learned that love doesn't end with death. It just changes form. And so it will be with us. I'm not really leaving. I'm just going ahead preparing things for when you arrive, like I always have. Live, Jack. Live fully. Love deeply. Do everything the war tried to take from you. Plant a garden. Build a house. Find a good wife. And have wonderful children. And when you look at them, you will see me looking back at you. There are apples in the barn for when you get back. Your favorite apple pie." Her voice became slower, more distant, as if she were falling asleep. And then, in a last, almost inaudible whisper, "I'm waiting for you, my son. I'll always be waiting." The tape continued to play for a few more seconds, recording only silence until a click marked its end. Jack sat motionless, holding the recorder as if it were the most precious object in the world. And in a way it was. It was the last time he would hear his mother's voice, the last word she would say to him, a fragile bridge thrown over the irreparable abyss of death. How many times in the war had he dreamed of this moment? The moment to finally return home, to see his mother's face lit up with the joy of the reunion, to feel her arms around him, those arms that had been his first and safest refuge in the world. But war, that merciless thief, had stolen that from him. He had transformed the dreamed moment of joy into an experience of loss so profound that it seemed bottomless. Jack slowly got up and walked to the window. He opened the curtains that his mother would never close. Sunlight streamed in, revealing dust particles dancing in the air. Outside, the world continued. Neighbors walked along the sidewalk. Children played. Life continued its relentless course, indifferent to the pain that consumed him. He turned his attention to the perfectly made bed, the pillow with a small depression where Martha's head had rested. The quilt was carefully stretched over the mattress. It was almost as if she had just left the room and could return at any moment. It was then that Jack noticed something that had gone unnoticed before. On the bedside table next to the bed was a picture frame, but it wasn't a photograph of him as you'd expect. It was a photograph of a young girl, a young woman he didn't know but who had something strangely familiar in her eyes. Jack picked up the picture frame curiously. He turned it over and found an inscription on the back. To Grandma Martha, with all my love. Sarah, 1944. Sarah, grandfather. Jack felt a wave of confusion. His mother had no grandchildren. He was an only child and certainly had no children. Who was this Sarah? And why did he call Martha Grandma? There was another envelope under the picture frame, smaller than the first, with just one word written on it. Explanations. With his heart racing, Jack opened this second envelope. Inside was a shorter letter, also in her mother's handwriting, but firmer, as if it had been written before her illness worsened. Jack, I know you must be confused by the photo. This is Sarah, your niece, your sister's daughter, Emma. Yes, you have a sister he never met. When you left for the war, I was waiting to tell you that I had found your older sister again, the daughter I had before I met her father, the daughter I was forced to give up for adoption when I was just a scared 16-year-old girl. Emma found us shortly after you went to war. She had gotten married, had a young daughter, Sarah. I wanted to meet your biological family. It was like a miracle in the darkness of your absence. Emma and Sarah became my comfort, my family while I waited for you. They are now living in Boston. The address is on the back of this letter. Emma will be so happy to meet her brother. And Sarah, your niece, talks about you as a hero. I showed her all your photographs. I told you all the stories of your childhood. Forgive me for not telling you sooner. Sometimes we keep secrets not out of shame, but because we are waiting for the right moment. And then, time slips through our fingers like sand. Go to them, Jack. Complete our family. Discover that love can emerge in the most unexpected places, even in the midst of the greatest of losses. I love you forever, Mom. Jack let the letter fall into his lap. A sister, a niece, a family he didn't even know existed. A new beginning amid the end of everything I knew. He looked around the room once more. This room that had been her mother's waiting sanctuary. This room where, until the end, she had maintained the unshakable faith that her son would return. This room that now contained not only the echo of a farewell, but also the seed of a new beginning. Have you ever felt that the end of one thing could be the beginning of another? That even in the most devastating losses, there can be a thread of hope, tenuous but resilient? Write hope in the comments if you believe that even in the darkest nights, there is always the possibility of a new dawn. The afternoon light streamed softly through the window as Jack sat on the old porch swing, the same swing where his mother spent hours watching the street, waiting for his return. In his hands, a photo album that he had found on the living room shelf, pages and pages of memories frozen in time. Jack ran, his fingers over a yellowed photograph. Him at 10 years old smiling next to his mother, the favorite apple cake on the birthday table, Martha with that look of pure love that only a mother has. How did he not realize before how precious that look was? How could you think you would always have time to go back, to relive those moments? Every turn of the page brought an avalanche of memories. The smell of the lavender perfume her mother wore on Sundays, the way she hummed as she sewed by the window, the sound of your pans in the kitchen on Sunday mornings, the way she ran her fingers through his hair when he was sick, a touch so gentle it seemed almost magical in its ability to comfort. It was then that he noticed something curious about the album. On the most recent pages, photographs that I didn't recognize. Older Martha, next to a woman who shared her facial features. A small girl among them, smiling with the same smile he saw every morning in the mirror. Emma and Sarah. Your sister and your niece, the family he hadn't yet met. There was one photograph in particular that captured his attention. Sarah wearing her old-school baseball jacket, clearly too big for her. On the back, her mother's shaky handwriting, Sarah wearing Uncle Jack's jacket, says she's going to be an aviator like him when she grows up. Jack then realized that his mother had found a way to keep his spirit alive, even in her absence. He had created a legacy through stories told to a girl who had never met him, but who admired him as a hero. The last hug. Now he remembered with painful clarity. In his rush to not miss the train, when he left for war, he barely looked back. A quick wave, a see you later, thrown over the shoulder, not knowing that that casual moment would be his last interaction with the woman who had given him everything. How many see you later do we say every day without realizing that some will be forever? Share a memory in the comment about someone you wish you could hug one more time. Because sometimes remembering is the only way to keep someone truly alive. The next morning, Jack Wilson found himself at the Ohio train station again, this time with a ticket to Boston in hand. In her suitcase Her mother's letter, Sarah's photograph, and a few carefully selected relics from the now empty house. As he waited on the platform, he observed the people around him. Mothers saying goodbye to children, couples exchanging lingering kisses as if trying to store up enough to last until their next date. Entire families recording each other's faces in memory. 5 years at war had taught Jack the value of life, but it was only now, through his mother's permanent absence, that he truly understood the value of time. That invisible resource that slips through our fingers while we're busy making plans. Time, that silent thief, had stolen from him the one thing he wanted most, one last moment with his mother. There was no grandiosity in this desire, just the simple pleasure of sitting at the kitchen table, to hear your voice not through a recording but alive, present, to say, looking into her eyes, how much he loved her. The war does not end when the guns fall silent. For those who wait, it continues in every second, in every breath, with each glance at the gate, expecting to see a familiar face. Martha Wilson had fought her own war at home, a war of waiting, of unshakable faith, a war that continued until his last breath. Jack realized that the real tragedy wasn't just about losing his mother. It was that they had both wasted 5 years that they could have shared. 5 years transformed into unwritten letters, impossible phone calls, hugs that never happened. Because war, this relentless machine of separation, doesn't just destroy bodies. It destroys possibilities. It destroys futures. And the greatest pain is not losing someone. It's realizing too late the value of the time that could have been shared. It's carrying the weight of unspoken words, unrealized gestures, moments that will forever exist only as potential, never as memory. This was the true cost of the war that no history book could ever quantify. The cost measured not in lives lost, but in moments that never came to be. The train to Boston arrived promptly at 9:15 a.m. Jack Wilson adjusted the military uniform he still wore and picked up his bag. I was about to meet a sister I never knew I had, a niece who considered him a hero without ever seeing his face. As he walked aboard, he passed a young soldier saying goodbye to his mother. He saw the hurried hug, his gaze quickly diverted to the clock. He saw the shadow of the youthful presumption that there will always be a tomorrow, always another chance, always enough time. For a moment he considered stopping. He considered touching him on the shoulder and saying, "Come back, give her a real hug, look into her eyes, tell her what she needs to hear." But he understood that some lessons can only be truly learned through personal experience. Some truths need to be discovered, not taught, and perhaps that is the final message of the story of Jack and Martha Wilson. A message about the value of the present time, about the fallacy of waiting, about the high price we pay when we assume that today's opportunities will be available tomorrow. If there is someone in your life that you cannot lose, a mother, a father, a child, a friend, don't wait. Don't assume time is on your side. Don't postpone call the visit, the words that need to be said. War taught us about the fragility of human life, but perhaps the most important lesson is about the fragility of time, about how it slips away, imperceptibly, until we suddenly realize that what we took for granted has turned into something lost forever. Jack Wilson would forever carry the weight of 5 years, of the 5 years he wasted waiting for a tomorrow that, for his mother, never came. But it would also carry the lesson that some opportunities never come back, that some waits have no end, that the only moment we truly have is now. The train began to move, taking Jack to a future he never imagined, for a family rising from the ashes of loss, for a chance to honor your mother's memory by fully living the life she waited so long for. The story of Jack and Martha Wilson is not just a narrative about loss, it is a wake-up call for us all. As you watched every moment of this emotional journey, something inside you likely transformed. A seed was planted. An indisputable truth about the value of the present time emerged with irresistible force. This is exactly the transformation we aim to provide in each video, a moment of clarity that forever changes your perspective on what really matters. Each of us carries a Jack Wilson within us, that part that postpones, that assumes there will be enough time, that leaves until tomorrow what should be done today. But now you know, you understand the high price of this. Waiting. This understanding is too powerful to stay with you alone. Leave your like now and subscribe to the channel so that this message reaches other hearts that need to awaken before it's too late. The power of this story is only complete when you make it yours, when you allow it to resonate with your own experiences and choices. The name you wrote in the comments is not just a word, it's a commitment to presence, to love expressed, to opportunities embraced. Share in the comments how this story changed your perspective on your most important relationships. Your experience is the fuel that keeps this community alive. You've felt the impact of this revelation, but there's something even deeper waiting for you, a secret that few discover, but that completely transforms the way we live each moment. Click now on the next video and discover the revelation that completes this message, a truth so powerful that you will never look at your relationships the same way again.